Welcome to the Better Birth podcast. We have a repeat guest today, which is very exciting. I have the wonderful Emma, the Naked Doula, who has come along to finally tell a birth story. Welcome, Emma.
Oh, and thank you so much. And you know what? This is actually the first, I think this is like the first, I've saved it. I've saved it for this. I've not spoken about my birth story on any other podcast at the moment. Like, no one
Flattered.
knows. Obviously, unless you're on Instagram, then you do know, but here we are.
I'm so excited. I've been dying to hear your birth story because I
Mm,
think it's a really, really important one. And anybody that listens to my podcast will know that I have a huge, varied range of birth stories. I do not just focus on one type of birth story.
right.
I think yours is a really, really, really fantastic story to share. Um, so where do you want to start? Do you want to start and talk a little bit about what your preferences and your plans were, and then kind of go from
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, with George, so Charlie, my first, was a breech boy, and I just felt the best thing for me at that time was an elective C-section. I wasn't, didn't think they were very competent with breech birth, and it just felt like the right choice. I had a great, amazing, incredible, euphoric C-section with Charlie. But obviously, my work, even though it supports all births, primarily I get hundreds and hundreds of messages, and I've worked with countless women and families and supported vaginal birth.
Mhm.
So I absolutely, desperately wanted a vaginal birth. I was so, do you know what? All I could see in my head was like this image of just my body like working and him moving down my birth canal. And then I was like so excited about crowning. Literally,
You really were. I
I
remember we all went for lunch and it was all you would talk about.
literally, I know, because I was just like, wow, like it's that very moment that you're on it's like between the worlds. It's between worlds, and it's just wow. Do you know what I mean? That's incredible. My body's done the work, and now my baby is fucking crowning. Like we're on the edge of being like inside this womb to like being outside. And
Mm.
I just wanted to feel it, and I wanted to yeah. Yeah. So, of course, my preferences were a spontaneous vaginal birth because I know statistically that that's the best possible way that I'm going to get a intervention free or intervention less birth experience. I also chose that I wanted to birth at home because, again, statistically, this was the safest place, even for a VBAC,
Mhm.
you know? Um, so that was literally in my mind from the very start. I mean, I did want a home birth with my first birth. So it wasn't like I, did a full 360.
Mm.
So the planning begun. Now, I literally, from that first appointment, when I went in to see the midwife, it was the midwife that I loved from my first pregnancy that I only got to see a few times. But I was like, right, I made sure at that appointment with her that she was the only one I was going to see. I think this is a really important point because one, I don't think people don't think they get to decide, but actually you can have that conversation about continuity of care. And I was like, I don't want to see anyone else. If my appointments don't fall on your days, then we'll change it to fall on your days. That's it. You
Yeah.
know, from that first appointment, I had all the conversations. I said, this is what I want to do. I understand it's out of guidelines. I understand that I'm down as consultant led because it's a class as a VBAC. I understand X, Y, and Z. And I did understand my options. And I really, really believe that because I started, I mean, obviously, in the work that we do, we are already quite informed. But the conversation started really early with my care providers because I wanted to be so clear
Mm.
and really open and honest. And I said to her, listen, I'm going to be really open and honest. And I want to continue that relationship so that we're on the same page.
Mm.
So from that point, all was good. Like, you know, they knew where I stood, and I knew I was going to be getting a call from the consultant. I knew I was going to be getting a call from home birth team, etc., etc. But from that point, I just carried on, preparing myself mentally, physically, seeing a chiropractor, osteopath, you know, doing all the things that you could possibly do. I was like, there is nothing that is stopping me from getting this vaginal birth.
Mm.
And if anyone can just whip a baby out, like, it's me. Like, I understand oxytocin deeper and better than like nearly all of the what do you call it?
Population.
Not
You,
population.
yeah, you live
Yeah,
and breathe it.
literally, like, it's just my most favorite thing to talk.
Mm.
Like, I just fucking love it so much. And I was like, yeah, this is gonna be great. And it took me back to my mum's birth with me, and I thought, oh my God, like, my mum was like, just, you know, oh, I've got, you know, feeling it, like, things are happening. She went and had a bath, went downstairs, like, had fish and chips, and then she was like, oh, I think we need to go now. Then they got to the hospital, 20 minutes, and then got in there. 18 minutes later, I was born. And I just had this like feeling that this is going to be me. Like,
Mm.
this is going to be me. And I visualized it every fucking day. Anyhow, so time went on, and I created my birth preferences, and it was literally, of course, home birth, spontaneous labor, regardless of, you know, how far along I was going to go.
Yeah.
Did I ever think that I was going to be that far along? Absolutely not.
How far along did
Uh,
you get
I
to?
was 42 plus 5. But you know what?
Just going.
But I'll go into that because it's ever so funny. Like, I just find the whole thing around that ever so funny, but I'll go into that because I once I hit 42 weeks, I was literally like, I'm all right now. Like, I was chill. But anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, so time went on, and I was doing my birth preferences, my birth plan, using my visual plan that I've got. And of course, I covered every single base. So that was my initial plan. This is what I wanted to do. However, if I was in a situation where I needed help or something wasn't right, then I skipped the whole induction thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not messing about with that. Not interested.
Mhm.
Like, that was just like, in no circumstances was I ever going to accept an induction. Would I discuss a membrane sweep? Possibly, depending on where I was in my journey. And if I was very late on, we know that even though it's a bit of a fucker, it's more likely to be something that works later on.
Yeah.
But still, in the front of my mind, I was thinking, I absolutely just want everything to do its own thing in its own time. So that was down. Great. No induction. Great. So C-section, these are my preferences. Great. Wanted a maternal led. If it was C-section, really wanted to try to experience me pulling George out my belly.
Mhm.
And in an emergency situation, baby was never to leave dad
Yeah.
under any circumstance. So I covered every single base. I was literally taking radical responsibility for my birth. I also stated within that if midwives were not able to come to me within my home, that I would free birth my baby.
Mhm.
And that's up to them whether they wanted to sort that, deal with that, whatever. I was taking radical responsibility of myself and my birth and my baby, regardless of what the outcome, you know, was. So that was that. And I made sure that I was going through every possible way that I could in that maternity system to have the conversations, to talk about my plan, to get it onto the system, take a fucking picture, you know, like
Come on board.
yeah,
Mhm.
I arranged a planning meeting, you know, went in, spoke to the labor ward, like head midwife and head of midwifery and all that jazz. So I did that, had the conversations, went through the risks, pros, cons, and all that. Great. Then the home birth team came. Well, actually, my midwife came to have a conversation. Was bringing a home birth midwife to have the conversation about home birth. But a manager came along. That was interesting because
Mhm.
there was a quite a lot of sort of coercive language in the conversation there. But again, I think when you feel confident in knowing what you can, what you can't do, and what birth entails, it it's quite easy to step up or stand up for yourself.
Mhm.
I think that when you're not quite there yet, it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm not, oh, I don't know, or that, yeah, or going along with something. But of course, it's me. And I was literally like, fucking don't tell me, you know.
They can say what they like, but it doesn't mean you have to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is policy, not law. So that happened. And then obviously the normal things start to happen later on in pregnancy, like the phone call from the consultant, the whole placenta is going to fail jazz, and conversations of which I asked for specific evidence on. I'm really, it's always really interesting, I find, to actually ask, and I mean, you've been here lots of times, to actually ask that specific trust what they're basing it on. And
Mhm.
I'd really love to see the research around that so I can make an informed decision. And I think she couldn't send me anything about the placenta, obviously, but there was something else about, I don't know what it was, but she sent it over and it was this tiny study that was like obstetric led in Switzerland or something. And
Scraping
I
the
was
barrel for research.
literally scraping the barrel. It was like so old as well. And I was just, so respectfully, I spoke to her and I said, respectfully, I actually replied to her and I was like, here's what I'm basing my choices on. And I was just really clear with her. And actually, from that point, not from that point, she was, she's speaking about what she thinks and what she knows to be true, right? But after sending that, she was like, okay, fair enough. This is what you want to do. That's fine. There was no back and forth. If she'd have come back to me and said and tried to argue with me, I would have changed consultants there and then.
Yeah.
Like, just because you can do.
Yeah.
And I'm not being, under any influence from someone who is going to try and fuck with my experience.
And it's not listening to you.
Yeah, exactly. Just ignoring me.
Mm.
And then in that situation, when you've got someone like that on your hand, it's very easy to curse you when you're in the fucking birth room
Yeah.
and when you're vulnerable.
Mhm.
Things happen, you don't fucking know what's going on.
Mhm.
I wasn't prepared to be that person.
Mhm.
So I continued on and it continued on and it continued on. And I went past it and I was having all the niggles. I was having all the feelings. I was having everything. My pelvis was great. He was so low down. And I was like, he's going to come early. He's going to come early. He fucking didn't come early. Got past 40 weeks and I was like, it's all right. We're all good. We're still, everything's great. But it continued on. I got to 41 weeks and I was thinking, fuck. And that 41-week mark, I had such a wobble
Mm.
because that 41-week mark for me, I don't know, it was just like, this is me now. I'm in this situation. I'm being watched by shitloads of people on the internet. Everyone's like, what's going to happen? What's happening with Emma's birth?
Mm.
And I've got to try and navigate the medical system and my own pregnancy. And it's just hard because at
A
that
lot of
point,
pressure.
it's a hell of a lot of pressure.
Mm.
And I mean, by that point in pregnancy, especially when you're that far along, your brain, like we know we are super susceptible, aren't we? But at that point, it's so easy to just go, yes, no, like it's just easy to just give in, isn't it? And just be like, oh my, like, please, like, I need help kind of thing.
Mm.
So I had to have a pep talk with myself, obviously. And I continued on. I opted for some, like, when I got to, I said, I'm fine. I feel fine. Baby feels fine. But when I get to 41 plus 6, I'll come in for, you know, scan or whatever.
Mhm.
Or no, I'll have a discussion about that. But I felt fine. And I'm super, super in tune with my intuition. And I trust myself absolutely, completely.
Mm.
So I knew that if anything was like felt wrong or didn't feel good, that I'd be straight in there. So 41 plus 6 came and went. So I got to 42 weeks. And actually, the anxiety dropped because I knew statistically that I was like kind of in a safe zone now. I was kind of like, okay, this is cool. Like, I knew the things to look out for. I knew that my risk of like meconium and things like that was, was a possibility with him being so far along. And I understood everything. I knew my choices basically.
Yeah.
So at this point, at 42 weeks, I was literally thinking like, this cannot go on much fucking longer. Everything felt good. My body felt good. I was dancing around still. I was happy. There was no issues. But I did start to notice when I was going to the toilet, like I was weeing extra when I was after I'd finished weeing. And I thought, oh, this is weird. Like maybe it's just pressure on my bladder. I didn't realize until like probably 42 plus 2 that my waters had started trickling. And then I was really fucking excited. The same day, I ended up going in for a wellbeing scan. Absolutely great. I knew all the things to look out for, with the questions and with things that were going on, but actually it was a really positive appointment. So that was great. She confirmed my waters were broken. They wanted to keep me in. Of course, I said, no, I'm going home. Things are starting. So why would I need to be in?
Why mess with it?
Why mess with it? Like my body is doing the things. It's doing the things. So I went home. So that was on the morning of this particular day. Oh no, was this? Yeah, so I'd started feeling niggles, and it was the following day around 1 o'clock. It started, and it didn't start like every half an hour. It went straight in. It was like every 7 minutes, just bam, which I love because I really do think that that's particularly common in later pregnancies like that. And the
Yeah.
body's just like, I'm ready to go. Like,
Yeah.
I'm ready to have this baby. And I literally was like, oh my God, I'm having this baby tonight. I was like, I'm having this baby tonight. So the contractions were coming, and I was literally so excited. I was loving life. I was loving life. I was like, yes. I was like, they're coming, And I was just doing my thing, carrying on. And I was like, it's happening. I was dancing. I was just doing whatever I wanted to do, carrying on with my life. It was great. So it continued on, and it was like getting more intense as the day was going on. And about 6 o'clock, so it had been about, yeah, it's been about 5 hours. By 6 o'clock, I was like, yeah, this is feeling good. Like I absolutely would labor at 10 million times. I really, 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 really was enjoying it. Put Charlie to bed, having to take moments, fine. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go to sleep now. I felt like Christmas. It felt like if you go to sleep now,
There'll be a practice of
then in the morning, yeah, and then in the night, you're going to wake up and pop out a baby. I was literally so like just an excited child. So I got into bed and like I laid down and I was like, yeah, they're still coming. Starting to like, they were more regular by this point. So we're talking like every 5 minutes. And I was like, yeah. So I like just let my doula know and my photographer. I was like, just so you know, like this has been happening. And I went to sleep. 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm literally, I can't sleep. I'm being woken up by them. They are feeling more intense, a little bit more uncomfortable. And I'm having to really like think about what's going on. So I'm like, yes, like this is fantastic. And I'm thinking, do you know, and obviously as a birth worker, you literally, it's your unique experience and your body's very individual. But I was literally taking that and I was thinking, right, I know where my body's at. And I'm thinking about all the other births and all the other situations and all the experience. And I was like, this, where I am right now, I'm thinking like, we're getting really close. And this is really this is so interesting, which I realize now, which we haven't spoke about. So I've gone to the toilet and I've like had a bloody show, like a bit of like mucus plugs come away. I'm like fucking loving life, like never experienced that with Charlie. So I was like so excited, taking fucking pictures and all sorts. I was like, look at this, it's fascinating. Adam's like, you are wildly strange, like weirdo. And I was like, yes, but it's incredible. So I was doing that whilst I was contracting. And I kept having to go to the toilet, and more waters was coming. And I was like, this is like, I was literally just so happy. So by this point, I literally thought to myself, I'm just going to have this baby. Like, I don't even feel like I need to call anyone yet. Like, it all feels good. Like, it doesn't feel like, doesn't feel like I need to call anyone.
Yeah.
So I carried on, and they were feeling really, really intense. Like I was having to focus through them. And then I had a massive gush of waters on my bed, and there was meconium. And I was like, shit. But then I was like, well, actually, and then I was like, well, actually, I kind of expected there would be meconium
Yeah.
being this far on. But what I couldn't determine was whether it was fresh, whether it just happened, or whether it wasn't. And I knew that that was a big indicator of,
Yeah.
possibly needing some help.
Mhm.
So I texted a friend of mine, who's very experienced in birth and was a midwife for many, 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 many years. And I said, what the hell is this? Like, tell me, help me, guide me. Like, I don't know what to do. Even though, funnily enough, when I think back, instinctively, I knew I wanted to go in. I knew I needed to go in. But
Yeah.
I think it was just in that moment, sort of seeking that outside validation that I didn't, because I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I wanted to have that baby now at home. I was so close. So the message response was, I'm not quite sure. I think you should go in.
Yeah.
So off I trotted into the hospital, got there, got to the reception, showed like we all had a big like, it was quite fun, got there, opened my puppy pads up. I was like, look, everyone, and everyone's like, yeah. And because I genuinely believe that because of all the conversations I've had, all the things that were on my records, all the notes, all the pictures of, preferences and everything, it was really simple for me.
Mm.
And I'm not saying, I definitely don't think it's because everyone was like, oh, it's the Naked Doula. I don't even think half of them knew, like, probably, I don't know if any of them knew who I was, I don't know. I've worked with obviously some of them in those situations, but I don't know. I just, do you know when it's that situation, you just think that no one knows you, like, you just think please don't, no one know me. So I'm there, gone into a room just to be monitored, make sure he's okay, like checked, it's all good, it's fresh. Game on, we're good. Consultant comes in, my consultant, fabulous, like great timing. And she said, I think that we want to carry on. I was like, well, I don't know whether I should just go home. And she said, well, we'd prefer you not to go home. But I said, right, well, stick me in a nice midwife-led room. Like, I want, all the works. I want a bath and everything. A pool. I want to relax. And I'll see how I feel.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel comfortable for me, then I really want to go home. Because I want to be where it feels most comfortable. And by this point, something had changed and my contractions felt different. I realize now what this is. So I've been led to this, I had this most wonderful midwife come to me on the changeover, just as they were changing over. She took me to the room and I instantly felt like, yeah, I think I can settle here. It was gorgeous. I felt really good. Had the space, didn't feel under pressure or anything like that. Rang the doula and the photographer, and they've joined me. So by this point, I'm having these really weird contractions. I can only call them weird because they changed and they felt really punchy. They felt like I was being punched in the cervix.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's hard because when it's you in your own body compared to other people and you're working with other people, it's interesting how you don't notice or maybe in that time what that could possibly have been. I just thought, oh, these have gone all sporadic and or maybe this is just like the last part of my active stage or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What I realize now and what we realize since having the outcome that I had is that my uterus was actually pushing. Those were pushing. Those were pushy. Those were like literally, I literally had to jump off. Like if I was sitting down, I had to jump up. I couldn't possibly sit down.
Mm-hmm.
I was like mooing. I was like moaning. I was moving. And I was like, and actually being in that moment, when I go back, I was so aware. And I was like, hey, like this is like baby stage.
Yeah.
Like how I'm reacting and how I'm coming out and how I'm like, I literally can remember, but they were so sporadic. They were like on and off and
Yeah.
they weren't consistent. And that's what confused me because I was like, this is weird. But I was literally having to stand up. I was having to stand up. I was having to lean over. I was having to really focus. And it was making me laugh actually, because I was like, oh, this is like, this hurts, like this feels intense.
Mm.
And I was working through them and then I was like laughing about it because I just thought, oh, like this is interesting, still trusted my body completely. 24 hours went by, nothing.
That's a long time.
Yeah,
Having
24
really
hours went
intense
by.
contractions.
And I was like, this is weird. I was like, something doesn't feel right.
Mm.
So I said, right, I'm going to have a vaginal exam and see, I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know because this is just, it feels strange.
Mm.
And I said, I'd never have a vaginal exam. But in that moment, I really needed to understand what was happening.
Mm.
So she did so. And my cervix was shut. In fact, I think it was open like by half a cent. She couldn't get a finger up. It was effaced with some like weird bumps on it, but it was shut. It was fucking shut. I was like, that's impossible. I was like, that's actually impossible. Like, that's just, I said, like, no, it's impossible. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, right, okay. And then something came over me. I was like, Emma, you've got 24 hours, like literally to just fucking let go, enjoy yourself, like have this oxytocin party. And I started like actually thinking, have I gone over the top? Maybe I've got too overexcited and I don't know. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what was going on. So 24 hours more went by. I was having these really weird, again, sporadic like contractions. They were really intense and literally they were looking at me. I think people were looking at me as if to say, like, what? We surely it can't be. Do you know what I mean? Because I'd just had a vaginal exam and my cervix was shut. So, Emma, you're not even in established labor. And I was just like, no,
Feeling like
this
you're in the final stages of labor.
literally, I was like, no, this is not. I just couldn't fathom it. I couldn't understand it. It
Mm.
wasn't making sense to me because how could that be physically possible? And I felt a bit like they were like, what are you, I don't know. It just felt, and do you know what? Now I think back, just think how many women are told like, oh, you're not in established labor. When actually, it doesn't really matter what the fucking cervix is doing at all.
No.
It literally doesn't. And we
Mhm.
know that things can change very, very quickly. This is why I had like pure hope.
Mhm.
We know things can change very quickly. So I just thought, well, we're just going to go with it. But yeah, the amount of people that are in that situation who feel disheartened, lack of oxytocin, who end up needing intervention, purely because someone turning around and saying you're not in established labor, even though they've literally felt and they physically are feeling themselves in established labor.
Mm.
And I fucking hate that term anyway,
Mm.
because it's just, there's no, it literally, there is
Again,
labor.
it's compartmentalizing labor,
Right.
not, it doesn't fit into boxes.
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. I've had a client before where it's been it's been like there's been no in between stage.
Yeah.
There's literally been no. There's actually not even a stage. You know, it's just been
Mm.
like straight in, bam, 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 and done.
Yeah.
And we know that labor is really not linear.
Mm.
And the fact that we follow textbooks as we do, it just. But yeah, we could go into that, or
Yeah.
couldn't we, all day long? So 24 hours more have gone past. And during this time, bearing in mind, like by this point, I am 42 plus 4. 42 plus 4, 40, I don't know because it was blurry by that point. But
Mm.
I'm oh no, on this particular day, the last day, I was 42 plus 5. I'd been in the bath, I'd been for walks, I'd had a midwife do like spinning babies like on me. I'd done the works, and the consultant came in, she was like, Emma, this isn't working. Like, what do you want to do? Because this, you've been in for like 3 days now. Like,
Don't
what?
just say like how amazing being having contractions that intense for that long is
Mm,
just testament to mindset. I mean, people worry about being in labor for a few hours and having like intense contractions, and you went days.
I know. I know. And do you know what? There was not one point where I thought, can't do this. Like, it just never entered my head because honestly, like, I was sitting there welcoming. I was like, so welcoming. I was like, yes. I was like, please, like, just more. Like, give me more. Like, I'm here. Like, my body. Like, I'm so like into it. And this is the whole point, isn't it? About mindset as well. I think if you're so, oh, what's the word? Like immersed in the beauty of something, how could it possibly feel painful?
Mm.
How could it possibly feel painful? It's almost like, do you know when people go for tattoos
Yeah.
and they like, some people are literally like, oh, I just love it. It
How did
just
you fall asleep having
literally,
tattoos?
people do sleep through them. And it's the same thing, it's that, knowing that nothing bad's going to happen, and knowing that, you're safe and you're choosing to do this, and you're just, what's going on. So yeah, no, I do appreciate that because it was a long time.
Mm.
It was a long time. And all this time I'd been in this, beautiful room. I'd been out and about, eating, drinking, bearing in mind I was classed as high risk, meconium, waters. They'd never had anyone that long, over that length of time before in the hospital. Um, you know, you, I was pretty much like the talk of the ward because they're just like, what the hell? But I'd already had these conversations. So everyone knew the score. Everyone knew the score. So yeah, I was still doing everything that anyone would do in
Mm.
their birth, regardless of my risk status or not, because overall I was healthy and overall my baby was healthy. And I was having intermittent monitoring just to check that, but I was definitely not like consistent monitoring and, and all that. And yeah, I had a pool, had a bath, did whatever I was doing, all felt, all felt fine. But I knew something deep inside just wasn't right. Something was a bit strange. And the consultant came in and she said, what we're going to do, I really would like to use dial-a-pan rods, just to help open your cervix, which, is probably the most natural. I hate using the word natural for induction
Yeah.
because I don't think they really go together. But the
Least
most,
pharmacological.
yes, perfect
Yeah.
way to induce or, open the cervix without using anything, harsh.
Mm.
So by this point, I had had another vaginal exam and nothing had changed.
Mhm. Up to 24 hours, another 24 hours.
Yeah, literally. So the whole time, like from start to finish, it'd been like 3 days, I think, and nothing had changed.
Mm.
And I was thinking, this is something isn't right here. Something isn't right. And I really had to like tap in and just tune in with myself. And I laid there and she was talking to me about induction. And I looked up, I can remember looking up at the stars above there's like they have like a star like thing above the pool, above the birth pool. I can remember looking up at them. And I think I was just thinking like so many things. Like obviously my mum passed away in my first pregnancy. And I was trying to have this experience and I didn't understand. And I was really getting a bit confused and angry and upset by this point.
Mm.
And I looked up and I think I just like was thinking about my mum and thinking about my situation and just really trying to just like tell me like what do I do? And I just had this massive like just this gut feeling that I needed to go for a C-section and I needed to go now.
Mm.
So I said to her, I need to go for a C-section and I need to go now. And she's like, okay. She's like, and she was actually not on. She was like, well, I'm in clinic, but let me see if I can, arrange that.
Mm.
And I said, yeah. I said, but I said, listen, it was quite funny because I said, listen, I said, I know I've broken all your guidelines and I know that I've gone over everything that you've ever experienced, but I want to go one step further. And she was like, fuck's. I think she was just sitting there thinking, fuck's sake, like just hurry up and get this woman out of this hospital. And I said, I want to pull him out myself. And she was like, right. It'd never been done in this particular hospital before. And this is what we call a maternal led
Mm.
cesarean. And I was like, yeah, I want to pull him out myself. Go big or go home, right? And she and I think by this point, I think she was just like, well, fucking whatever. Do you know what I mean? Just give her whatever she wants. Give her whatever she wants. So she was like,
From this
okay,
far.
literally. So she's gone off, she's spoken to the team, and clearly think it's upset people.
Yeah.
So they've come back and they're trying to say that the theatre team aren't comfortable with two people there. They're not comfortable with photos. They're not comfortable with this, that. And it was a bit of a struggle at first. And we tried to argue, like, what are you on about? Like, I can take photos of my birth. Like, that's not a law. Like, and actually, I can have two people there. Just don't bring the fucking student in there.
Yeah.
Like, just kick them out. But they were arguing about it. And I thought, I wonder, like, it's just interesting, isn't it? How people react or how people are triggered. Because here I am in that situation. But do you know what? It made me feel a bit uneasy because I thought, I'm about to go into this theatre with this team
Yeah.
who I'm trusting with my body and my baby, but they're not, they're already showing me distrust in, you know,
You don't want to go into like a hostile environment, do you?
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Because even if you're going for a C-section, how you feel, your environment, like, your mindset,
So
everything
important.
still has a massive impact on how your body's reacting, how much blood you lose,
Mhm.
what your recovery is like. Every single thing is impacted, and people don't realize this. Often they'll go, I don't need to do anything, or I don't need to do a course, or I don't need to do hypnobirthing, or I don't need to do mindset because I'm having a C-section or I'm having induction. Actually, you need it more so.
Yeah.
You need it more so. So at this point, when I said that, she left the room and I cried
Mhm.
so hard because I was just so many things were going through my mind, and I was like, I can never go back to my Instagram again.
Mm.
I was literally like, I can't, my body's failed me. My body's failed me. Like I can't tell people that. I just can't. I can't share it. And I was just so upset and I rang a friend and she was my doula mentor, and I was like, what is going on? Like, this is not, it's not fair.
Mm.
Like, you can't, you know, take my mum away in my first pregnancy, you know, have to go through those situations. And then now I'm here and what? I fucking, everything's been thrown at me. And
Mm.
now this is the final fucking straw. I just, yeah. And she turned around to me and she said, Emma, you're forged like in fire and you're basically paving the way for everyone else.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. And I was like, okay. But in the moment, you kind of like any shit that happens to you, you know, like any kind of event that is uncomfortable or, you know, with emotion, you kind of like, well, that's not fucking fair. That's not fair. I don't want that, you know? So, you know, it took me a little bit of time and I had to try and just, I felt like I was just like trying to save face. And I was like, right, Emma, you're going to be meeting your baby very soon. And it was my birthday, funnily enough. And I was like, maybe this is just all happening and it needs to happen this way. It's my birthday and this baby's coming today.
Mm.
So off I went to theatre and I walked into the room and I just burst out crying again
Mm.
because it was the exact room that I'd given birth to Charlie. And it just took me back to that moment and the grief of losing my mum. And I was just like, oh, like it was just really overwhelming. Like it felt a bit blurry.
Mm.
I sat there and the anaesthetist is like obviously talking to me. I fucking have no idea what he said. He's just putting the cannula in and talking me through. Still, I fucking cannot tell you what he said to me.
Yeah.
I don't know because I felt like I just wasn't there and it felt a bit blurry. And even though everything was good, like I made every single choice, you know, I made every single choice. And as I tell the story, you know, it is a very incredible, very positive story, but it still can affect you
Of
in
course.
certain ways, you know.
Of course.
So I'm lying down and I can feel the I can feel the spinal block like just going over my body. Like I recognize the feeling, but that feeling, and you'll understand this, Erin, that feeling instantly triggered an emotion in my brain that took me straight back to me birthing my first child without my mum. And I started to panic and my body started to react.
Mm.
And I was a bit like shaky and I was panicking. I thought I couldn't breathe. I was like, it's too high. I was going, it's too high, it's too high, it's too high. I can't breathe. I was thinking that they'd done something, they'd injected me wrong and my lungs were shutting down. I literally felt like, and I've not shared this
Mm.
before, but that's what it felt like.
Mm.
And they were like, you're fine. Like everything's fine. Everything's perfect. Like it's going really well. But it didn't feel like that. And I closed my eyes and all of a sudden, and similarly, before I just tell that part, in my first birth with Charlie, I closed my eyes and I took myself to my birth zone, to my place that I'd been envisioning. And I sat there with my mum by the waters, holding her hands until, until Charlie came. So I knew that maybe I'd experienced something similar, but this was just so strange. It was like I closed my eyes and all of a sudden, it was like this film reel of all my memories with my mum as a child.
Mm.
And it just like flicked through. Like it was like hundreds, do you know what I mean? Just one after another. Like it was so fast. And I don't know, like it felt like I just wasn't, it felt like I was in between like not even being alive. I know that sounds really weird. Like it felt like I was in between some kind of fucking plane. Like I was just, I don't know. It was just a really strange feeling, and it felt like forever, but it literally wasn't. And I think like I can't even remember because I'm sure it was literally only like 5 minutes, because you know that once you're all good to go, the process of getting baby out is super fast.
Yeah.
You know, it's super fast. So this is happening and I'm like teary, and then they've like put the gloves on my hands and they're going, right, it's time. And I've opened my eyes and I can't see. I'm going, I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. I was like, I can't see. And I felt like I couldn't see, you know, I felt like I couldn't like lift my head up like to see. And then I saw him, and it was like he hadn't been born, like he didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like going, and I took him and I pulled him from my belly. Oh yeah. And by the way, during this point, photos were being taken because they'd agreed for one person to come in, and my husband at the time, like who was so super stubborn, was like, well, F you, the photographer's going in. And they were going to do a swap over. I
Yeah.
know. He was like, I just want to capture the memories.
Yeah.
Bless him. So here I am, pulling George out of my belly, and I pulled him to my chest, and he was a big chunky baby, and I was like, oh, and I just put him on me, and like as soon as I'd put him near me, he literally woke up and he was like, ah! You know, like I want to be in the world. That's what it felt like.
Mm.
It was just like an instant, like, here I am, which he is very much like he is now, 1 year down the line. Here I am, you know, all is well, like I'm
I'm
here.
finally here.
I'm finally here, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously he was covered in meconium. He had, all his bits and bobs on him. But, as I stated in my preferences, I don't want anyone to be touching him. Like no one is to touch this child. And I laid there, sorry, and I had him on me. And that's where he stayed for the majority of the C-section being done. I'd also opted for vaginal seeding because and we've had these conversations before, he was so severe with CMPA, cow's milk protein allergy, that I really wanted George to have all the beneficial bacteria
Mm.
from my birth canal, which builds up during pregnancy. So got into recovery, and I was given it's so weird. It is actually really weird when you have to wipe them. It's really strange because it feels so unnatural
Mm.
to do that. But there I was, and the midwife was looking at me a bit like, okay. And there I am just wiping him down. But yeah, I was there, and I've got him. And it was amazing, and everyone's like, wow. And the photographers show me these photos, and I'm just like feeling really numb. I felt really numb. And
Mm.
everyone's celebrating. Everyone's like, look at what you did, like, and now I do like completely, I'm like, oh my God, like, look at what I achieved. Look at what I did, and look at what, but at the time I felt really, really numb, and I was like, I'm not, I just can't talk about birth ever again.
Mm.
A few days later, me and the consultant were emailing. She was sending me over what she had found. And she said to me, when we opened you up, there's quite a lot of fluid, so there's obviously a lot of pressure. And your uterus was completely thinned out at the bottom. And all my muscles were the muscles of the uterus were all at the top.
All drawing up.
All drawn up at the top, which we know, like that uterus was literally ready to be pushing a baby out.
So so your cervix should have dilated.
100%. The cervix. So she couldn't explain. She was like, if you'd have carried on without this C-section, you would have ruptured.
Mhm.
But I obviously instinctively knew that something wasn't right. But yeah, I still, but still on my records, it says failure to progress. But I had progressed. I'd done the whole fucking
No.
thing. I'd
Yeah.
done the whole length of labor. I'd
Mhm.
done the whole start to finish labor. I'd done it all. There was no, you know, but my cervix had stayed shut. It didn't make sense. But at this point, I'm feeling really thankful that I've obviously followed my gut instincts and gone for a C-section. And for people who are listening, this is extremely rare. Like, this is very, very, very rare. Like, you would not usually find a cervix that stays shut like that. Like, it's just not a thing. It's
Yeah.
not a thing. And if it is, it's usually underlined with a medical condition or, let's procedure or, you
Mhm.
know, or something like that. Very rare. So I still didn't understand at this point. And again, I was just numb. I couldn't watch vaginal births. Like people were messaging me at this time, by the way, like who were pregnant at the same time as me on social media, like, I've had my baby. People were sending me photos, videos, asking me questions. Is your baby come yet? Like it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was so triggering
Mm.
and it was so like upsetting. And I just felt like shit.
Mm.
I felt like shit. Like I completely dissociated myself. I felt completely just numb,
Mm.
so numb. And that took a while before I could watch a vaginal birth video again, you know? But when I look back now, like I understand a few things. I know that my pelvic floor is slightly hypertoned. However, not enough. What's come out is not enough to warrant a closed cervix.
Mhm.
So more investigations need to be done. But, it is what it is. And you have to just, when you're in these situations, when things don't go your way, I know, like I can look back and go, do you know what? It didn't go the way I wanted it to go. But I literally navigated every single part of my pregnancy and birth with such fucking grace
Mhm.
and with such like informed choice and self-trust and intuition. Like, how can I not be proud of myself and my
Absolutely
body and
proud.
everything, being able to guide myself in that way and birth George how I did? Like, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And what wisdom and what growth
Mhm.
I've gained from that experience.
And how much other people will learn from it as well, because
Mm,
there are people who will have had far more questionable risk factors or hurdles thrown at them and will not be supported to make those decisions or will not feel confident to advocate for themselves or will end up being pushed down a certain path that maybe isn't necessary or isn't what they wanted. And I think hearing your story hopefully will help other people make those decisions and have the
yeah.
strength to make those decisions. Because, I mean, literally everything was thrown at you.
Yeah, everything.
Everything was thrown at
Everything.
you.
Yeah.
Um, and you held fast, you held, you poured all of your faith into you listening to your intuition and your body, and you stayed strong. And it wasn't the birth that you originally envisaged, but you still had a say. You still, right to the very end, you still had a say in how your birth unfolded, even though
Mm,
it wasn't what you originally envisaged. And I
yeah.
think that's a really important, it's a really important message to put out there. I
Mm,
really, really do think it is.
yeah. I agree. I think that, we often, when something is that starts to go off a path or go a different way, very often we haven't really built that true self-trust. So what happens is we just end up giving up.
Yeah.
We go, oh, like, well, it's going a different plan to what we expected. And especially when you've got outside voices
Mm.
as well, when you're in that vulnerable state, you kind of just go, whatever, just get the baby out,
Yeah.
it, and yeah, and it's so easy to be in that situation, by the way, it really is. Um, and I don't think that we understand, obviously, because of the amount of programming and conditioning that we are under, we don't understand like how important it is to really, really deeply trust yourself,
Mm.
to be able to take that responsibility for yourself and your actions and ask the questions,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's uncomfortable.
Mm.
Sometimes you're really in uncomfortable situations, which the easiest option is to just go outwards for the answers, right? Like, you tell me what to do. You do what you think is best, rather than actually owning our power and going, no, hang on, like, what feels best for me?
Mm.
This is what I'm faced with. It's shit, but you know, but let's see how we can fucking flip it. Let's
Yeah.
see how we can actually take this and make it still influenced by me, even if it's the furthest away from what we expected. So, I think that honestly, like, I'm so thankful I had that birth,
Mm.
because the wisdom
Mm.
that you gain from experiences like this are just incredible. The same with loss, the same with any, situation where you feel there is no fucking hope. Those times of darkness are truly gifts.
Mm.
They are truly gifts, because if you can work through that, you can really learn, grow, and just emit more fucking light at the end of it. And yeah, that's what it did for me. And I'm just so, so thankful that I'm in this position now, with all the learning and experience that I got from that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're inspirational, honestly. You know, the fact that you the fact that you managed to get a maternal assisted cesarean in a hospital that have never done it before. I mean, Jesus, I would not want to mess with you, because you you must have advocated so hard for that.
Yeah,
Like, that is, and again, that's a huge learning point, I think, for other people that who just think that it's impossible to get certain
right,
things agreed, right? Because it's not
right.
the case. You advocate hard enough. If someone tells you no, you don't take no as the first answer. You go and find
Yeah,
somebody that will say yes.
right. And nothing is impossible.
Mm.
We all think that things are impossible because we are told things are impossible, because we are programmed and conditioned to believe things are impossible. Nothing's impossible.
Mm.
Absolutely nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
Honestly, this has been like a theme for me over these last, since, especially with mum passing. I'm just like, nothing's impossible. Like, there's no limits. There's no limits to what you can do and
Mm.
what you can experience and how you choose to experience it.
Yeah.
Just like how I chose to
Yeah.
experience my labor.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it. I loved it. And I know for a fact now, and this is what's really comforting to me, is that I know now I understand what was happening inside my body at the time, that should I have not had an issue with my cervix, which is an ongoing investigation, I would have had that baby that night.
Yeah,
I would
definitely.
have had that baby within like a couple of hours after that whole big flush of water with meconium.
Mm.
Baby would have come,
Mm.
because that's what was happening.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine my uterus must have been quite strong to be having those like pushy contractions for that whole time I was in hospital.
Days.
Whoa. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so glad I chose that, made the choice that I did.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I asked the questions afterwards. We don't
Hmm.
often do that, do we? We just think, oh,
No,
whatever.
because then you wouldn't get, I don't know, I don't want to say closure, because it's not closure, but understanding,
More of
I
a
think.
picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is really important. And again, I think a lot of people don't do. they don't seek answers, they don't ask for debriefs, they don't get their notes. And I think that's really, really important to because otherwise you do just see that failure to progress label and think my body
Yeah,
failed, you know,
exactly.
not
Exactly. And
the
then when you're
case.
talking, like, it just, and actually, for most people, let's say like 99.9% of people, even more of you listening to this, like, will not experience the problem with your
Mm,
cervix like I have experienced. Like,
mm,
this is, like we said, it's extremely rare.
mm.
But the failure to progress thing, which seems to just fucking be flippantly just written down all over the place, like, that doesn't mean your body's broken
No.
at all. Like, at all.
Mm.
And most of the time, you just need more time, don't you? Or you need
Yeah.
a difference in environment, or there's so many different factors.
Yeah, most of
This
the time
is
it's not failure to progress, it's failure to wait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, the time. This is the time scales are just.
But I mean, you
If
waited. You definitely
I
waited.
waited,
You
I
gave your body
waited.
lots of time, and it was
I
not the
did.
quickest thing.
I did. And 42 plus 5, and it came out, and he's perfect, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
I really, really appreciate you coming on to share your birth story because I think it is a really brave thing to do, given, the area that we work in and the fact that we talk a lot about physiological birth and we talk a
Mm.
lot about, you know, how to navigate the system and how to avoid medical intervention. And I do think, again, I think it's a really important story to tell because people often accuse us of being anti C-section,
Oh,
anti
yeah. I get,
medical,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
that's not the case. It's knowing when it is medically necessary, and
Right.
being able to navigate things so that you are making those decisions in an informed way and understanding when it is medically necessary. And you absolutely did that. And I think it's a really good example of giving it your best go, listening to your body, and then identifying actually the C-section is the right choice. Like
Yeah.
instinctively, and every other sign is showing me that this is the right choice. This is the safest way to give
Yeah.
birth to my baby, and then
Yeah.
making that decision. So I think it's a
Exactly.
really important story to put out there.
This is the thing, because every decision that was made, I made it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, it can be upsetting, isn't it? Talking with other people who, when people will say like, I had to, or I didn't have a choice, or this is what had to happen. And I just feel like the power is just taken out of our hands so
Mm,
many times. But it's time to take our power back.
mm.
It's time to take our power back. And I hope that this can really help people navigate the system.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we finish today, one thing we haven't
Yes.
talked about, which I think is very, very important, is your new
Yes.
book, which I would really like people to go and get copies of. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your book covers?
Yes. So the Fearless Birth book is all about going from fear to fierce. And it's not about, being fearless as in, like, fear shouldn't exist.
Mhm.
It's more about actually taking the fear that we have, because we all have it. We all, as humans, are programmed and conditioned that way. But it's actually taking it and being curious, and understanding more about it and leaning into it so much that you become fearless. Um, so it's bit of a journey. It's very different, I feel, to any birth book. It's very illustrative. I do all my own illustrations. So it's very fun and very, very colorful and easy to digest. But it takes you through a journey through your brain, your body, birth, baby, and beyond. All the bees, which I love. So it starts with the brain. It's taking you through a journey of like self-trust and self-confidence, how the brain works, like what your brain's telling you, all the hypnobirthing techniques, how to reframe, how to, create, your reality basically through what you're thinking, and really help you connect with yourself. Like, it's just, this really is the key. Moving into body. It's again about body awareness, about trusting your body, about sexuality, hormones, how to work with your body in every way, what labor is going to look like, how that affects your body, like how does it work, like what's the uterus doing, like it really covers just absolutely everything. And this is where we delve into some of the techniques that people talk about, and I talk about floppy face, floppy fanny, Kiko, positioning, partying through labor, like all the things connected to your body. And by this point, and the reason I've done it like this, if you've gone through the brain and the body section, by the time you get to the next section, which is birth, you're actually feeling really good about yourself. You're feeling like you've rewired your brain, you've practiced the exercises. So you get to the birth section and you're like, literally, I feel so ready to now investigate what the options are in birth and what my choices are. And I know that I can trust what I'm doing with that. So birth section, informed choice. Oh, also just go back to body, massive section on red flags, body autonomy, all that, because that's big. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. Like this is, unfortunately, we're in a world where we have to advocate for ourselves. It just is how it is. I'm not going to flower it up.
Yeah.
So we need to know what body autonomy is, what it looks like. We cover that as well in the body section. Birth, everything, you could think of that comes up in birth, what it looks like, how to, make plans, inform choices. And then we also go into the dilation stuff, like what other ways can we look out for our body, pooing in labor, like all the things, crowning, actually giving birth, breathing baby out, and which I just love because people think that you're blowing a candle, but it's really not like that. Please do read up on it. Golden hour, birth trauma, and also baby loss. I have there's like 4 pages on rainbow babies and actually birthing a sleeping baby,
Mhm.
which I just felt was really important and something
Yeah.
that's not usually brought up in birth books, but a lot of a lot of women have been through loss.
Yeah.
Um, and then the baby and beyond, which is really fun. So talking you through, what you're going to experience, what's happening with your body, what's happening with your newborn, from the simplistic things with your newborn to, the cues and how to change a nappy and the poos and all that, taking you through breastfeeding, bottle feeding, the microbiome, colic, and I say that with like little bunny quotes because
Never
most
read
of the time
colic.
it's underlying issues. So we go into CMPA, like allergies, other issues that it could be. Um, yeah, there is literally when I talk through it like that, there is so much in this book. I mean, what did you think, Erin, when you were going through it? You're like, how is all this in here?
There's literally so, but the thing I think that does make you, look, there's a few things that makes your book unique. I think one is the visual element because
Mm,
your illustrations are iconic and instantly recognizable and they're really fun, which I think is really good. But I also think, like you said, you cover things that I think a lot of other birth books don't. The fact that you cover loss and rainbow babies and giving birth to a sleeping baby, I think is unique. Like I can't think of any other books that would cover that, which I think is really important. And the fact that you cover the postpartum bit as well, I think is really important because so many birth books just focus on up to the birth and they don't focus about anything afterwards. And I think that's a key part of education that we neglect. We don't
mm.
we don't focus on. And actually, you know, once you've given birth, everything else that comes after that, I mean, that's like it's huge, it's life changing, and that doesn't
Yes.
stop, it doesn't end. So the fact that you've got that, I think, is really, really important. Um, it's a hefty book. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's not a little skinny book. I mean, obviously because it's got so much in it, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a
good
good
book.
size, isn't
It's
it?
a,
Like
it's a
it's,
very good
yeah,
size.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I love that. No, I appreciate that, Erin. I think they're really good points and exactly why I wanted to cover them things. So
yeah, yeah. No, I
thank
think I
you.
would go and get a copy. And
Yes, please.
yes, it's
Yeah, you could
fantastic.
order it. You can order it online, Amazon, Waterstones, WH Smith's. which sounds absolutely insane. Like it's just so weird to say that.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm now an author and an accidental illustrator, I like to say. And yeah, I hope this is really going to help just people find the power. That's
yeah.
all we want, you know.
And it makes it accessible
Oh
to
yeah,
everybody, which I think is
completely. I mean, honestly, like there's some great books out there, but I find it really hard to sit and read through like just words, and then be able to remember or take things in. Um,
and I think it'll be fun for birth partners to read as well.
oh yeah, yeah, 100%.
Because I
They'll
mean,
love
you,
it.
you hand a birth partner a really thick, chunky, wordy book, and maybe I'm overgeneralizing here, but I don't think they're going to read it. But I think they probably
No,
will read yours. So hopefully, some birth partners get to
get their
enjoy
hands
it
on it.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on today, Emma. It's been an emotional roller coaster, but I
Yes.
think it's been, like I said, really fantastic to hear the birth story and some really important key messages, I think, that you've shared. And yeah, I can't wait to see what else you do next because you're just
Thank you.
inspirational. So thank you.
Thank you, Erin. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me on again.
Anytime. You can be a repeat guest forever.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much.